Welcome to the chapter Friction.
This slide presents the overview of the chapter. Learning objectives. By the end of this chapter, you will be able to
Understand the concept of frictional force. List the advantages and disadvantages of friction. Define static friction, sliding friction, rolling friction, and fluid friction. Explain the methods of decreasing and increasing friction. Identify the factors which affect the frictional force. Discuss the change in effect of frictional force with the area of contact. Explain how friction produces heat.
Introduction. Before entering into the chapter, follow the instructions shown on the screen. Click each tab to know more.
We might have observed that a ball moving on the ground comes to rest after moving through some distance. Similarly, we know that a vehicle comes to rest after some time once its engine is switched off. Do you know why the ball stops after covering some distance? Do you know why a vehicle slows down when its engine is switched off? Let us find out the answers to such questions in this chapter. Now, let us perform an activity to identify the forces acting on a body and effect of frictional force. Click each tab to know more. Take a brick. Place it on a table in such a way that the face with greater width is in contact with the surface of the table. Now, push the brick and observe the changes. We have observed that the brick attains a certain speed in the direction of push. Similarly, we have also seen that the speed of the brick decreases slowly and after some time it stops. Finally, we learned that there are two forces acting on the brick. They are weight of the brick, that is W, or gravitational force acting vertically down, and normal force, that is N, or reaction force applied by the surface of the table vertically up. As there is no change in the motion of the brick along the vertical direction, the net force acting on the brick in the vertical direction is equal to 0. When we push the brick in the horizontal direction to the surface of the table, the brick attains a certain speed and its speed is decreasing slowly in the horizontal direction. In this case, the surface of the table applies a force against the motion of brick, whereas the brick also applies the same amount of force on the surface of the table in the opposite direction. The force acting along the two surfaces in contact, which opposes the motion of one body over the other, is called the force of friction or frictional force. Since friction is a type of force, it is also measured in Newton, that is N. Note, when the speed of the body moving in a straight line changes continuously, we say that the body has acquired an acceleration. Let us do a lab activity to understand the nature of friction and the concept of static friction. Click each tab to know more. The aim of this activity is to understand the nature of friction and the concept of static friction. The materials used in this lab activity are toy trolley, small wooden block, inextensible string, weight hanger, weights, pulley. Take a small toy trolley, place it on the table. Take a small wooden block, place it on the toy trolley. Take an inextensible string. Tie it to the trolley and pass it over a pulley as shown on the screen. Take a weight hanger and tie it to the other end of the string. Make sure that the toy trolley does not move. Now take a small weight and place it on a weight hanger. Observe the changes in motion of the wooden block and the toy trolley. Now keep on increasing the weight on the weight hanger. Observe the motions of both the wooden block and the toy trolley. In this activity, we have observed that the trolley with the wooden block on it comes into motion towards left with an acceleration while adding the weight on the weight hanger. Here, the wooden block is in motion with respect to the surface of the table, but it is at rest with respect to the surface of the trolley. We have also observed that the speed of the trolley or trolley's acceleration will increase while increasing the weight on the weight hanger. At a certain limiting of weight, the block comes into motion in the reverse direction of motion of the toy trolley's direction. This implies now that there exists a relative motion between the surface of the trolley and the block. We know that friction is the component of the contact force parallel to the surfaces in contact, which opposes the impending or actual relative motion between the two surfaces. In this activity, we learned that there exist two types of frictional force at a time. One is the static friction that exists between the surface of trolley and the wooden block kept on it, and other is a sliding friction between the surface of the table and the toy trolley. Here, the wooden block is at rest relative to the surface of the trolley up to a certain limiting acceleration or limiting weight. The friction that exists at this stage is a static friction. So, when two objects are not moving relative to each other, a force opposes or resists the lateral movement of the objects, and this force is called static friction. Similarly, the toy trolley moves with respect to the surface of the table. The friction that exists at this stage is a sliding friction. So, when the surface of one object moves relative to the surface of another object, it is called sliding friction. Here, we can do an activity for observing the variation of friction. Click each tab to know more. Consider a heavy object like a trunk box of approximately 100 kg weight. Try to push it by applying a small force and observe the changes. Now slowly increase the applied force on the heavy object until it starts moving. Observe the changes. We have observed that the heavy object does not move while applying a small force because there is a frictional force which is opposite and either equal or greater to the applied force on the heavy object. We have also observed that at some point the heavy object starts moving while increasing the applied force. We have learned that the frictional force or static friction also increases accordingly and balances the increased applied force. So we can conclude that static friction is a self-adjusting friction and the object starts to move when the applied force is more than the limit of the static friction. Factors affecting friction. Maximum frictional force depends on the following factors. They are nature of the surface in contact, area of contact, normal force that acts on the body. Now, we can perform an activity for observing the nature of the surface in contact. Click each tab to know more. Take a wooden board. Make it as an inclined plane on a smooth floor or on a table with the help of some books. Put a mark on the inclined plane and label it as A. Now, take a battery cell and release it horizontally from point A. Note the distance covered by the battery cell from the bottom of the inclined plane to the point where it comes to a stop. Now spread a piece of cloth over the horizontal floor. Make sure that there are no wrinkles in the cloth. Once again, release the battery cell from the point and note the distance covered by it. We have observed that the battery cell covers a greater distance on the smooth floor because the frictional force between the smooth floor and the battery cell is low. We have also observed that the battery cell covers a shorter distance on the cloth surface because the frictional force between the cloth surface and the battery cell is high. Finally, we learned that friction depends upon the roughness or smoothness of the surfaces in contact. Therefore, we can say that friction is caused by the irregularities on the two surfaces which are in contact. Let us study the effect of roughness on frictional force. We know that the friction is caused by the interlocking of irregularities, ups and downs, in the two surfaces. When the two bodies are placed one upon another, the irregularities of the surfaces of the two bodies get interlocked as shown on the screen. When a force is applied on one body to slide it upon another body, its interlocked irregularities oppose the applied force, which appears to us in the form of friction. It is for the same reason that a sufficient force has to be applied before one body starts sliding upon another body. Therefore, the force of attraction is greater on the rough surfaces because a large number of irregularities, up and downs, exist on them. Let us do an activity to identify the effect of area of contact on frictional force. Click each tab to know more.